There's nothing quite like walking into chakras on a Wednesday morning and finding out that there's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Maimed for Torah of an incredible Siyum of this caliber. I think most of you know that I myself spend a certain amount of time learning Mishnayos. And, you know, again, when people are nifter, there's an need of learning Mishnah because Mishnah has the same letters as Neshama. And the fact is that Mishnah is the foundation of our Torah Shebal Peh. When we talk about Torah Shebal Peh, we're talking about Mishnah. And I can tell you that I know that it's not an easy thing just going through Mishnayos and staying with it. And Yaakov, how long have you been doing this?
Since October.
Since October. To do Seder Moed since October. That's an absolutely incredible achievement. I can tell you that. And you know, but the fact is that it fits perfectly. You know, in this last Mishnah that Yaakov was learning, he quoted a halacha that one has to be extremely careful not to be metame the shulchan and the menorah, because the shulchan and menorah, they're always in business, right? It's like 7-Eleven. It never closes, right? It's always there. It can never be taken away. The question is, you know, the Torah could have set it up so many different ways. You have other kelim that could be taken away. Why is it specifically important that these kelim are the kelim that are never removed? So what do they represent? The shulchan is the representation. Again, you have to remember that the Mishkan, and then ultimately the kelim and the Beis HaMikdash, are a microcosm of the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. Right? Now it's like any of you ever been to Little Israel in Latrun, right? Yeah, and you have these little models, and you're somehow expecting to hear, you know, hey, it's a small world, right? You're expecting to hear that, right? But it's an amazing thing. The Mishkan, if a person studied it properly, would have the very secrets of how the world was designed, how HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plan was. And so when we look at it, we look at the way that things are made to be. The Shulchan is the representation of Gashmias in this world, of physicality, of using the world physically. The Menorah is the representation of Torah in the world, right? And that's the, right? Because that's Torah, right? As the Gemara Megillah says, Torah is Torah. It's Torah. And so you have this balance of Torah and Gashmias. And they're never removed. They stay with it. In other words, you don't get time off for bad behavior. Right? You always have to stay with it. And they're put at opposite ends within the Heichel because we're meant to create a balance in our lives. And the only way a person can have a balance in their lives is that their eye always has to be on the ball. Excuse the pun. Right? You always have to be in the game. You got to stay with it. And that's a tremendous message of creating balance in our lives, is that whatever we're doing, whether it's in Ruchnis, whether it's in Gashmias, it's to always be thinking about it, planning it. It's not, we don't live in a whatever world. We live in a world in which we plan and we stay with it. And the truth is that I can't think of any better representation of this than our Baal Simcha today. Baruch Hashem Yaakov, from the day he got here, has been somebody who's worked consistently, given 100% every day, whether it's in his learning, whether it's in his studies, whether it's in his sports, whatever it is, he's there. You know, we all remember him limping in there, right? I mean, and I think that's a beautiful, beautiful representation, and really should act as a tremendous model for all of us. And I would like to wish him and his parents, who are like the two most dedicated support system I've ever seen. I want to wish all of you nachas and mazel and just, you know, just continued nachas from this young man. And again, with Hashem, I'm looking forward to Hashem when Yaakov is going to make the Siyum in Shas Mishnayos, with Hashem, and with, I hope you'll invite all of us, right? And we're looking very forward to your continued success, both in Ruchnis and Gashmis. And thank you so much for being a great inspiration to all of us. Mazel tov. Thank you.
like to thank Hakadosh Baruch Hu for bringing me to this day. I'd like to thank Rabbi Yafi, Robinson, all my Rebbeim for constantly pushing me and bringing me this far. I'd like to thank my parents, my grandparents, and my siblings for all their encouragement. I'd like to thank my friends for actually being here and staying and sharing this info with me. May we all share in each other's continued Siyum, and may you all come out tonight to cheer us on as we bring the national championship, the basketball championship, back to May. Bring it back. It's coming back. When our class decided to learn as a whole, I was inspired to finish a whole Seder of Shanis. With the help of my Rebbe, I was able to accomplish this huge milestone. Thank you, Rebbe. As you know, today is the first yahrzeit of the 3 boys that were murdered last year in Israel. The parents of the boys have asked to create a sense of unity in Klal Yisrael. There's no better way of us showing achdus than in learning. During that difficult time, Klal Yisrael came together as a whole. We should learn that although difficult times can bring us together, it is important to remember that we are always one nation. A great example of this can be seen in a story taken from Splendor of the Maggid from Rabbi Pesach Peron. This is the story. Several years ago, my brother, Rabbi Coleman Krohn, was in a taxi in Yerushalayim. The driver was not wearing a yarmulke, and he seemed angry and bitter. He barely grunted hello to my brother, who was obviously an observant Jew. There was a stony silence in the taxi as the driver wound through the narrow side streets at breakneck speed. Finally, my brother broke the silence and said in Hebrew, "Anachnu achem," we are brothers. The incensed driver responded angrily, "Anachnu lo achem," we are not brothers. Ata dati vani lo dati. You are religious and I am not religious. My brother turned to the driver and said softly, "My Rebbe told me that those who are dati, religious, and those who are not dati are brothers." The driver looked sideways at my brother and asked him disdainfully, "Who was your Rebbe?" My brother replied delicately, "Adolf Hitler." The driver whirled to face my brother as his mouth dropped open. He actually lost control of the car for an instant as it swerved toward a parked car before he regained control. For a long moment he was quiet. Then he pulled over and stopped the car. He turned to my brother and said, "You are 1 in a million." "No," my brother replied, taking the driver's hand. "We are 2 in a million, because anachnu achim, we are brothers." Why must we wait for the killers and anti-Semites of the world to teach us that we, all Jews, regardless of religious commitment, are brothers and sisters? Of course we have differences, and great differences at that. But our goal must be to minimize those differences from within ourselves and not wait until we are all treated as despised from equals from without. Chazal teach, Ein Yisrael nigalim ad sheyu ba'aguda echas. The Jewish people won't be redeemed by Mashiach until we are all one group. That should be our number 1 priority. Even though I did this in honor of the boys, we shouldn't need tragedy to bring us together like the story did. This Siyum should be l'zecher nishmas to 3 boys, Ayal, Gilad, and Naphtali. May we be zocha to finally have unity in Klal Yisrael.
Sorry that you started it. Mazel tov, mazel tov. Beautiful.
I was going to say, something small. You know, there's a famous idea brought down. From Chaim Shmulevitz, the Rashiv Namir. He said that we find that when Yosef was sold to be a slave, so Chazal teaches us that in the caravan that he was sold in, it was a caravan where they sold beautiful smelling spices, wonderful aromas, and different things. He says the reason why Hashem did this is that sometimes Hashem wants to show you a kiss. He wants to show you that even though he seems far away, and even though we can't see him, and even though it doesn't seem, on a day-to-day basis like we have a connection to him, every once in a while Hashem will show us, he'll give us a kiss to say, I'm still here. And even in the biggest tragedy, like Yosef, can you imagine a Jew being sold as a slave? His brother selling him, right? I was not aware that you made the Siyum for the 3 brothers. I learned this fact last night. And you could ask Yaakov when we were text messaging each other back and forth, I kept saying, this is crazy. I can't. What's crazy? I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but originally the Siyum was meant to be planned for Sunday.
right? Due to many of you guys being at the parade, I wasn't gonna be able to be here the whole time. Different considerations, we decided that it's best to make it on Wednesday, even though it's more difficult for the parents. We felt it was the right thing to do. I had no idea that when we did this, we were moving the date of the Siyum to the same day as the yahrzeit of the three boys. I'm sorry I'm getting choked up, but to me, is that not a kiss from Hashem? I mean, we plan, we do different things, but sometimes Hashem shows us, you make a plan, I'm going to make sure that this happens on the yahrzeit of the boys because you're making the Siyum for the yahrzeit of the boys. I have no doubt in my mind that these three boys are here with us right now. I have no doubt in my mind that Hashem is here with us right now, and how lucky you are to be zeicha to a personal, intimate show of ahava from Hashem that not all of us are zeicha to see. Yosef saw it. If we look in our daily lives, maybe we'll see it too. But you see Hashem right here. It's to me, it's unbelievable. But when Yaakov said that he did it for the boys, I thought of a story that I once read. The story goes about the Baba Rebbe. The Baba Rebbe came to America, Shlomo. So he wanted to revive the Baba Chasidus, right? A lot of them were unfortunately killed out in the war. He wanted to revive them. So he decided he's going to start, what do you start with? You have to start building yeshivas, schools. So he started a cheder. And he appointed, I'm sorry I don't remember the rabbi's name, but he appointed a certain Rav to be the menal of the cheder. And he was going to oversee the day-to-day runnings of the cheder, and any question would come to the Baba Rebbe. And this Rav gave leiv and nefesh, he gave his heart and soul to the running of this cheder. He was personally involved with each kid, each class, each rebbe. It was his life. But there's one thing you need to know about this Rav. He himself never had any children. And I don't think if we could, hopefully none of us should know this, but you can imagine the tsar of a person who has to work with children, beautiful Jewish children all day, and himself not have his own children. But he went about his day, the simcha, encouraging the boys, always with a smile, always positive. One Purim, the Baba Rebbe felt that he should show this Rav Hakaras HaTorah for all that he does for the cheder. So he showed up at his house. He said, let's have a l'chaim. He took a l'chaim, he made a shahakal. And when he was done, he said, B'rei nefashis rabbis v'chesrin, right? The bracha we say after a drink. And he said, I'm telling you right now, I give you a bracha, then by next year you're going to have children. So the Gabbai who was with the Baba Rebbe said to him, I also don't have children, but he said, I thought of you as well. I think of you every single time I make a B'rei nefashis. Because every time I say the words B'rei nefashis rabbis, the one who creates many souls, I thought, who are the ones that need many souls to be created? Unfortunately, the parents who don't have kids. And every time I make a B'rei nefashis, I think about you, the Manal, and I think about you, the Gabbai. And I don't know why the Baba Rebbe felt that at that time his tefillos were in the skabel, maybe Purim is a certain school for tefillah, but whatever it is, great people, big people, big people. What's the definition of big people? People who think about other people. That's what big people do. The Vilna Gaon tells us that a gadol, right? If you ever want to learn the definition of a word, the true definition of a word, find the first place it says that word in the Torah. That will reveal to you what the true definition of the word is. I told you guys once in Shir. The word gadol appears first in Parshas Bereishis when it discusses the great light that Hashem created. In other words, the sun. What's the most? If we'd have to define what the sun does, the sun is a giver. The sun is always giving of itself. The sun doesn't get anything in return. It just gives and gives and gives. Gedolim throughout the generations, whether they're Svardim, Litvish, Hasidish, whoever they are, if you look at them, there's one consistent thing, and that is that they give to other people. They think about other people. People are always on their minds. They're not consumed with themselves. And that's why, to me, the fact that Yaakov decided to do this, it's a little bit of a time on all of us. I mean, I hope, I can say that I wish I did this. I'm a little bit jealous that I didn't have this idea. But we need to start thinking like this. We need to learn from him. We need to learn from the Baba Rebbe. We need to learn from everyone. We need to be more concerned with Klal Yisrael and less concerned with ourselves. I'm not saying you shouldn't take care of yourself. I'm not saying you shouldn't play ball and have a good time and eat and drink and be happy. But your focus has to be, what could I